Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to We Took a Chinese DNA Test. Here's what we found from GoldThread. I am not familiar with this channel. They are decently large, 273,000 subscribers. It's going to be a Chinese DNA tests. Don't know which company it's going to be because I'm assuming that it's not going to be Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, MyHeritage, or what was the one I missed? Ancestry, yeah, or any of the other companies like Living DNA or anything like that. So, not sure what it's going to be. I know we did watch with the Singapore DNA video, Singaporeans Try. I forgot what the company was called, but they did a company that was based out of somewhere in Asia, and I can't remember where exactly it was. I think there was a user that looked into it, and they said that they couldn't get that test in the US, or it was like really difficult, but I don't know. So we'll have to see what this is going to be like. I'm assuming if it's a Chinese DNA test, I assume that these people are of Asian ancestry on this channel. I'm not quite sure. I've never seen the channel before. So with a Chinese DNA test, I'd expect more granularity in Asia, specifically in East Asia. But I guess we'll just have to see, because I'm not sure what to expect otherwise, other than, probably Asian results. And before we jump into the video, please be sure to give this a thumbs up. It really does help me out. Also, be sure to subscribe and click that bell for notifications on future videos. But now, with that fun stuff said, let's go ahead and watch the video.
Today we're going to talk about DNA tests, and specifically ancestry tests. Because if you're of East Asian background and you've ever taken a test with big companies in the West like Ancestry or 23andMe, you've probably found that the results can be a little lacking.
Yeah, they're going to be very broad because those companies don't necessarily have the largest population groups to work with for that area, so they're not going to be as specific in their definitions.
I did this DNA test like 3 years ago with Ancestry, and when I got back the result, it said that I was 99% East Asian and 1% Pacific Islander.
As for a parent looking at your face, I guess.
Right.
I got 94.4% Chinese and Vietnamese. That means they didn't split it out. And I got 4% Japanese and or Korean. And for some reason, inexplicably, 1.6% Finnish.
Interesting.
So why is this happening? It's essentially a database problem. Since companies can only match your DNA with the DNA samples they've collected, the results are limited by the pool of people they have.
Yeah.
So if you're in the United States, you're not likely to have a whole lot of specific information about someone in China. But that's why a whole bunch of Chinese DNA test companies have popped up in recent years. Companies like 23andMe and WeGene promise more specific results.
I think WeGene might have been the one that the Singaporeans Try did. I'm not 100% sure.
Down to which part of China your ancestors are from, based on their pool of Chinese people's DNA. So we wanted to try it for ourselves.
On my dad's side, my dad is Hakka, and that means that supposedly there was a big migration from north to south in the Jin dynasty. How long ago is that?
It's like more than 1,600 years ago.
Okay.
See, that's not gonna. I don't know if that would be something they could read with these tests. With the tests that give you the ethnicity admixtures, or what's specifically known as an autosomal SNP test, they usually give you an idea of about 300 to 500 years. That's usually around the range. It can vary depending on the how old generations are in your family, because if your parents were really old when they had you, and your grandparents were really old when they had your parents, and so on, then when you go 200 years back, you might be only a few generations back, whereas for other people they might be twice as many generations. So that's going to be a lot more of a change. So that's part of what's going on. So it's about 300 to 500 years is usually the range. Some people will say a little differently, but about 300 to 500.
So big migration, and my dad's side of the family doesn't have any records about where they come from or who they are. And I'm just curious. I've been curious my whole life.
Our results came back 3 weeks later. So let's see what they say about my Chinese ancestry. I am apparently 81.73% Southern Han, 11.4% Zhuang or Dai.
Okay, and where's that from?
It's two of the ethnicities in Yunnan province, which borders Vietnam and Myanmar and Laos.
Okay.
And I am apparently 6.87% Korean.
I got Korean. So let me tell you about my results. I'm 88% Southern Han Chinese, also 11% Korean.
I don't know if the percentages actually say that I'm like actually 6.87% Korean, just that 6.87% of my DNA matches someone who also said they were Korean.
6.87% of your DNA matches a whole group of people that had shared DNA that all identified as Korean. So all of these people that they tested are identified as fully Korean. That's one other thing with these population groups is that it's based on, the people that join the groups, it's based on what they know, and sometimes what they know may not be correct, so that can sway things. But there's a huge group of people. They figure out what's the DNA among all those people that they are finding in common, and then they kind of define that as like, okay, we're going to define that as Korean. It's a really simplified way of putting it. But that's the way to, it's not as simplified as the way he's putting it. But what he's saying is pretty much spot on. It's just, it's not identifying him against one person. But in terms of just what he's saying, yeah, it's a big group of people that are saying that they're Korean.
And that's sort of one of the flaws of these DNA tests. It's based on someone saying that they were of this ethnicity. And what's more, because companies often don't share the same samples, the results can vary from service to service. And just to illustrate how widely varying the data is, I sent my DNA to another Chinese DNA testing company called WeGene. They gave me very different ancestry results. They said I was 57.26% Southern Han Chinese and 26.1% Northern Han Chinese.
Interesting. Yeah, WeGene really got specific. I'm not going to even try to pronounce a lot of that stuff because I'm sure I'm going to be way off. But they also, even with the trace results, like others 0.03%, not even being able to round up to 0.1%. I mean, this is really interesting, being able to see the difference between two Asian DNA testing companies, because I've never seen that. But kind of what he was saying, I do want to touch on. These companies they'll go out, they'll pay for people to go out and do studies or population group studies and things like that. And it's not like they're going to pay and do all that stuff, and then once they get the information back, be like, let's share it with the other companies. No, they're going to use it as their leverage of, what makes them special as a company. So as an example, one thing that MyHeritage does is they try to get really specific for anyone with Jewish ancestry. So if you have Jewish ancestry, they're going to try to define specific Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, things like that.
The other thing is that these results are based on how big the sample size is. So if it's very small, like say a couple hundred or thousand people, you might get very unsatisfying results. We talked to a genetics professor at the University of Hong Kong about the sample size issue, and this is what he said.
To get really good coverage, you may need millions of people to kind of have a what we call statistical power to discern differences between North and South of China.
And then that doesn't even include what possible issues may come up, because the people in North China and the people in South China may still share different ancestry. And because of that, that shared ancestry is going to cause confusion in deciphering them. It's not going to be clear cut like, okay, these people are Southern Han, these people are from the northern parts of China. No, it's going to be, it's going to be very, just a lot of overlap and stuff like that,
And the CEO of 23 Wolfong thinks that's possible.
今天已经有接近50万人的数据，美国在2012年全美有30万人做了直接面向消费者的基因检测，然后到2017年结束是1200万人， 2018年结束是2600人，中国在2017年结束的时候，就整个中国刚好也是30万人，所以说按照美国5年的速度，应该是5000万人的一个量级。
And as the sample sizes of these companies grow, we could actually see our results changing.
We don't know as closely where we've come from, so they were curious as well, and they just know that we're most probably not Finnish or Korean. But when I explained it to them, they said, yeah, it kind of checks out that the Hakka thing, going all over the place. Yeah, that's how they processed it, and they were quite amused actually.
But then at the end of the day, it's really just about whether our DNA matches someone who reported what they are.
Trust me, when I explained that to them, they lost interest immediately.
It has to be Chinese or Japanese or Korean. Why?
Nothing. I just wanted to know your feelings about this.
I got no problem. As long as I got 90% Chinese, it's fine.
All right, that was a pretty decent video. I was pretty happy with it. I think the way they explained things was really nice. I liked how they did two companies that I'm not really familiar with. I have heard of WeGene. I think that's what the Singaporeans did, but I can't remember. I like the comparison. I am curious if these companies do genetic matching. I was really hoping for a second he said something, he said it really depends on the genetic matches. And I thought he was going to talk about, genetic matches and the actual, this person's matching it so many centimorgans or they're estimated as second cousin or whatever. And then he was just talking about that in the terms of the population groups being defined by people of saying, well, all of my grandparents were this. To address the whole Finnish thing for her, if the 1.6% is true, which on a continental level, it's usually fairly confident. They can usually be fairly highly confident on a continental level. Not always, but often they can. And so if that 1.6% is true, first of all, getting her parents to do the DNA test could help tell her if it's through one or the other, or if maybe there's something else funky going on. But if it is 1.6%, that would be a fairly distant ancestor. So that could be maybe a third or fourth great grandparent. So as an example, you share about you get 50% of your DNA from your parents, but then you share about 25% with your grandparents, 12.5% with your great grandparents, 6.25% with your great great grandparents, 3.175% with your great 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 grandparents, and so on. It keeps getting but it's not exact. It's not always exactly half. You can, you may end up getting 21% from your grandfather and 29% from your grandmother. It just mixes that way. So with 1.2%, it may be that there is an actual Finnish ancestor in her ancestry, and it just is so distant that the family didn't know. But that would take either more DNA testing through either her parents, possibly getting, if she has siblings, getting them to test, or even better, if she has grandparents still alive or siblings of her grandparents or anything, getting them to test, because, you go generations back, if she does have that Finnish ancestry, the older generations are going to be closer to that Finnish ancestor, and so they should get higher amounts. So if that 1.6% is true and she has a grandparent who tests, turns out to be through that grandparent's line, that grandparent could end up having 10%, 8%, 12, something like that. And then you can get a really good idea of, is it true? Is that their Finnish ancestor truly in her ancestry, and how far back are they actually? Well, thank you so much for checking out this video. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to give me a like. It really does help me out. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It is completely free to do so. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. See you in my next video.